Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this IT governance webinar on scoping a FastTrack ISO 27001 implementation project. I'm Alan Calder. I'm your host for today. I'm the founder and chief executive of IT governance. I've been at this business of ISO 27001 for some 15 years or so. How to get ISO 27001 certification, everything that's involved in it, and the challenges around scoping are all areas in which inevitably I know far more than is perhaps good for me. I've written a number of books around ISO 27001. The book that I originally wrote, IT Governance Manager's Guide to International Guide to Data Security, is now in its 8th edition, or 8th edition due for publication very shortly. A number of other books around cybersecurity, privacy, and so on. So what I'm talking to you today is based on lots and lots and lots of experience to helping clients tackle ISO 27001 and doing so in a way that enables them to achieve their result, which for most companies is actually about getting a certificate on the wall, not about enjoying the journey to get there. As a company, we have some 20 years of experience around ISO 27001 and the much broader range of products and services that go with it. We, in our consultants, our subject matter experts, our trainers, have years and years of really deep subject matter expertise that enables us to really help organizations practically and pragmatically get the best out of an ISO 27001 certification. Of course, we've got a comprehensive offering of products and services, and we have clients, some 12,000 of them, spread across all 5 habited continents. When you look at how we deliver that in terms of services, 1,300 organizations we've helped prepare and maintain ISO 27001 compliance. We've had 15,000 more than that delegates on our ISO 27001 implementer, auditor, foundation, and related training courses. We're also a Cyber Essentials certification body, and we have now some 2,500 customers using our governance, risk, and compliance software. And we have a mass of certifications from certification bodies, both for our consultants, for our training services, and of course for our own management system. Quality is baked into what we offer. Our Net Promoter Score is 63. That's a smidgen off of world class. World class comes in at, as you probably know, at 70. Our Trustpilot scores are in the excellent area, so sitting at an average of 4.7. So you kind of know, because this is customer feedback, you kind of know that what you buy from us is going to be put together as well as we possibly can and delivered in a way which is designed to give you genuine satisfaction in a way that you can comment on it. And I'm going to talk today, therefore, about how you can tackle ISO 27001, or we can help you do that, but how you can get through the challenge of I need to get an ISO 27001 certificate. How do I do that cost effectively and in an optimum time frame? I'm going to talk about the fast track approach to certification compared to traditional approaches. I'm going to look at roughly how the process works. I'm going to talk a bit more detail about how you define the scope of an ISMS with a fast track methodology, how to get senior management support and buy-in to the project and its scope. We'll have a brief look at what CyberComply does and how that helps make everything happen smoothly, effectively, cost effectively and quickly, and that's pretty well going to be the end of the webinar. That's all going to take about 35 or 40 minutes of me talking. If you find that you have questions, and hopefully you will as we go through, please do put them into the live chat box. So in your GoToWebinar box, which you should have on the screen in front of you, you'll see a panel marked questions. If you click on that and open it, you can type questions into that. When we come to the Q&A session at the end of this, what I'll do is I will turn to the question and answer panel, and I will pick out the questions and I'll go through them in order of priority. I'll share the question with you all, and then I'll answer it to the best of my ability. You're all on mute, obviously, because that kind of means that we can cut out background noise, but please do interact with that kind of question and answer setup facility, and I'll look forward to responding to those shortly. So that's the agenda, that's the plan, and I'm going to start off with the fast track approach to ISO 27001 certification compared to traditional options. So logical place to start is why ISO 27001. And for many clients, the driver for 27001 is a client of theirs, but not always. Sometimes it is the board sees ISO 27001 as a logical mark of assurance. Sometimes it's part of a legal regulatory compliance drive. But as I said, mostly the key driver is customer requirement. We need to know that you are ISO 27001 certified and compliant. And the driver for that is, if you just take March alone, March this year, 299 million records breached in nearly 3,500 cyber security incidents. I mean, that's huge. And of course, if the answer was simply to deploy technology, then we wouldn't have breaches, because everybody's deployed lots of technology, and the reality is that deploying more and more technology doesn't make you secure. What makes you secure is working out where your risks are and putting appropriate controls in place to deal with them. And I promise you, that may just mean you don't need to deploy quite as much technology. You might be able to spend less. 613% increase from March a year ago, although a bit of a decrease from February. There was a mega breach in February, but nevertheless, the overall trend is up and up and up in terms of numbers of breaches. A couple of the significant events. One was a misconfigured Google Firebase led to compromised Ray servers, contributed to a massive spike in incidents. And ISO 27001 exists because it's long been recognized that for an organization to simply go, we've done some stuff and we're now secure, doesn't really engender a lot of warmth in your clients, because having an international standard, having an independent body certify you against that standard is a lot more robust as a way of demonstrating that what you do has been thought through and put together intelligently. And ISO 27001 is the international standard for certifying, against which you can certify an information security management system. There are no other international standards. There's no competition for it. It is the standard. We're up to now something well in excess of 70,000 companies who around the world have that certification. I'm expecting over the next 5 to 10 years it'll push up to beyond a million. There's a million companies with ISO 9001 at the moment. We expect to see 27001 surpass that. And certification to 27001 is much more than simply about protecting data and protecting the organization. It's also about building trust with customers, about gaining a competitive edge and laying a foundation for best practice security that helps you drive sustainable growth without having to spend a lot of time worrying about security. Because once you've got it systemized, you've got robust processes in place, actually you expect them to work rather than spending your time worrying about what you might have missed. So ISO 27001 certification, the international cybersecurity trust mark. It meets many customer contract requirements, helps you win additional business, simplifies the contract qualification, the RFP, RFQ response process. In so many cases, you can simply offer your ISO 27001 certificate rather than filling in pages of information security questions. It enables you to demonstrate legal and regulatory compliance. You need to deal with protecting personal data, for instance. How do you demonstrate that as a board, as a management team, you've taken appropriate steps to do that? ISO 27001 helps you do that because it is about protecting the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. It enables you to meet stakeholder employee assurance expectations, and of course manage and mitigate cyber risk in a way that not only reduces disruptions to the business, but reduces penalties that come because you didn't take the appropriate steps to reduce the disruption. So it's a multi-benefit standard, and of course, because it's an international standard, the certification which you might get in the UK is going to be valid anywhere that you do business. You don't need to get a separate certification to do business in the US or France or Germany or Japan or Australia or anywhere else. The certification you have is an internationally recognized certification. So there's a kind of graphic summary on the screen now of the benefits of ISO 27001, and I'm imagining that you're pursuing ISO 27001 for one, if not most of those reasons. If you're only pursuing it for one of those reasons, actually it's worth your while thinking about how you address and get all the other benefits out of it, because they come for free. You generally don't have to do more to get all of the benefits. It's much more about making sure that what you've done is available and obvious to more people than the thing you're doing it for if you only have maybe one or two reasons for it. So really good, strong, clear, robust benefits to ISO 27001 certification. Now the traditional method, and you know, I led the first company that was certified to the standard which became eventually ISO 27001. So it's a kind of DIY approach. If you do it yourself, your starting point is you need to get senior management to support it, because it's going to cost money, it's going to take effort, it's going to affect the whole organization. So senior management support, you've got to talk them into, and if you are a senior manager, then you need to be supportive, and then you've got to develop a project plan. Project plan has to have money allocated to it. You've got to work out how long it's going to take, who you've got to get involved in it, what does that all look like, and the next thing you do is a gap analysis. You take ISO 27001 and you compare all of the requirements of ISO 27001 to what you actually do. The reality is that most organizations are already doing a number of the things that are specified in ISO 27001. So typically when you're looking at an ISO 27001 project, you're not looking at doing something which is completely new. You're looking at building on your existing good practice, identifying your existing good practice, identifying the holes in what you do. You do that by a gap analysis. Here's ISO 27001. Here are the detailed requirements of it. What are we doing and what are we not doing? And that gap identification enables you to prioritize the actions that you need to take to address them. You need to get staff involved in the project, not just the staff who are going to be on the project team, but the people who are going to play roles in mitigating risks. And that includes people in HR, it includes people in marketing, in IT, in project management, it includes inevitably all staff, because all staff are dealing with data. So you need to get all staff involved. You need to think about how you do that. And then you've got to start producing documents, policies and procedures. Effectively, ISO 27001 says this is what you've got to do. The first thing you've got to do is produce a set of documents that reflect the requirements of ISO 27001. Then you've got to go and make sure that your staff are doing and your processes reflect what you've written in your own policies and procedures. You as the standard says, you implement appropriate controls to mitigate risks and review their effectiveness. And having done all that and having done it in a way that enables you to get certification bodies to come along and have a look and go, yep, you're doing it right, and give you a certificate, you then move into continual improvement. You will have started the continual improvement journey prior to certification because the certification body is going to want to see that you have a working internal audit process. They're going to want to know that you're able to deal with non-conformities, with continual improvement suggestions. You're identifying ways to continue driving enhancements and improvements to the information security management system. So that's the kind of an overview of the traditional DIY approach. We, over the years, have kind of got that down to a very clear 9 steps, 9 discrete steps into a successful ISO 27001 implementation. And this book is that you see on screen is referring to the 2013 version of the standard. You'll get a 2022 version of it out shortly. It's not a very big difference between the two standards from an implementation point of view. The process is exactly the same 9 steps. And if you're doing it yourself, typically we're talking, say, a company with around about 200 employees, doing it yourself, working out how to do it from scratch, putting together your own project plan. We typically see clients taking something in the order of about 18 months to get to the point where you have a certificate. Doing it yourself, but getting some additional resource in so that you've got some people who can get on with producing documentation, for instance, enabling people to have to take less time out of their day job to help the project go. That'll usually cut about 6 months off the project. It'll get you down to about 12 months. Organizations doing it themselves, additional resource, and deploying a platform like CyberComply can typically get the project down to between 6 and 8 months. And a platform brings the benefits of you don't have to work out how to do a lot of stuff because it's there on the platform. The FastTrack approach will get you down to between 2 and 3 months. It sits on a CyberComply platform. It's a very specific, highly structured, well-organized process which is designed to get you certification ready from a standing start in between 2 and 3 months, and all of that at a fixed price. So that's the kind of range of options in terms of time, in terms of how long it takes to get there. And how much does it cost is the kind of logical question that follows on from that. You might normally think that, hey, doing it the fast way will cost more. And actually, that's not the case. The reality is that doing it quickly means that you get optimized use of resources, keeps your costs down. Doing it yourself, that's a kind of, it's how much time do people have to give up? It's what do you lose in terms of what they might otherwise be doing? That's a kind of complicated thing to work out. And that's assuming that you finish, because we find probably half the organizations who set out to do it themselves kind of lose momentum 6, 9, 12 months into the project, and it just peters out. And so you spent the money and the effort and you never get the result. Some additional resource, typically around £100,000. So another effective, somebody who knows what they're doing, plus training, plus competence, between 90 and £110,000 of additional cost. Getting some additional cost in using CyberComply as a platform means that you do it a lot more quickly. That means you don't need to be paying somebody else for the whole of a year. You're looking at maybe only 5 or 6 months, so that gets your typical cost down to something in the order of £50,000. And with FastTrack, with CyberComply, you're looking at generally around about £25,000, and that's typically a fixed price package for an organization. That's a platform-based, highly structured, very focused way of getting your ISO 27001 certified. It's a process. FastTrack is a process. We invented it, obviously. It's designed to streamline the whole certification process for small and medium businesses. It offers a clear, efficient path to securing an ISO 27001 certificate. It simplifies what can be an overwhelming experience, breaking it down into manageable steps and providing expert guidance tailored to the unique needs of small and medium businesses. And it goes more than just providing guidance. We do the heavy lifting. And that means that you can achieve certification really quickly in a timely manner while you've got a client who says, I need you to do this. You want to get certification. Can I help you pin down and win a specific contract? It enables you to do that. So you're not just complying with international standards, but also you're thriving in a marketplace that values security. You're building on what you do very quickly to get to the point where you're demonstrating how it adds value to the business that you're secure, rather than just protecting you from risks. And so what is CyberComply? I've mentioned a couple of times. It's a platform. It's a cloud-based information security management system platform. It's developed by our experts through our experience. It has everything necessary for building and maintaining, and maintenance is a key part of ISO 27001. And ISO 27001 certificate is a 3-year certificate, which you then recertify. You have surveillance visits coming all the way through that, from the certification body all the way through that 3-year period. And what they're looking for is to see that you are continuing to maintain it. So they're looking to see that you're doing internal audits, that your continual improvement process is working, that you're staying on top of policies and procedures, you're updating them, all of that kind of stuff. And if you're doing that on a platform, it is so much easier to do than if you're doing it on SharePoint and in Excel and in Word files and trying to remember what's going on in a system that you create to manage it. It comes out of the box. There's no room for error, lots of room for time saving, efficiency, and results. And that kind of means that when you look at what the FastTrack service delivers, when I said earlier on, we do most of the heavy lifting, that's exactly right. So you take that 9-step implementation process, and this graphic here pretty well shows you where we do most of the work. You've got to provide input on the stages 1 through 6, because we need data and information from you, but we basically do that work. So all of the, how do we put a project together? How do we put the ISMS together? What does the scope look like? How do we determine what the standard means when it says deal with interfaces between what's in scope and what's out of scope? All of that we deal with. You give us some input and we do all of that stuff. In the implementation phase, which is taking processes and procedures and implementing them where they're different to things that you're already doing, you've obviously got to do that, because it's your business, they're your people. We'll support it, we'll give you guidance, we'll tell you what we know works, but that's the key area where you've got to do stuff. In terms of making the processes around measure, monitoring and reviewing, internal audit, support through certification, typically that's all part of the FastTrack service. So as you can see, the FastTrack service essentially just takes huge amounts of workload off of you. It means that you can learn what you need to learn as and when you want to learn it, so that you can operate the system. But it means that you can focus on the benefits of ISO 27001 rather than the how do we actually put it in place. You can focus on how do we extract the improvements in processes, how do we extract the new business, how do we get all that out of the ISMS rather than getting bogged down, and how do we actually get it in the first place? Because essentially we do pretty well all of that for you. So kind of sum that up, ISO 27001 fast track means that you've got a consultant who is an expert on implementing ISO 27001, but who's an expert in the sense of being able to make it work in your business environment. They're not somebody who says, well, bureaucratically, this is what has to happen in every organization. So, however bad it is for your organization, you've got to do this. Consultants are, if they're good, are expert at saying, okay, the standard says you've got to do this in your environment. From what I understand of your environment, this is how we go about making it work for you, and I'll produce some documentation that covers that, and you can get on. And so the consultant is taking you through, and in most cases doing the work involved in 8 of the 9 steps in that 9-step process. That means that you can effectively leverage your internal expertise, because you can draw on the external expertise, your own in-house skills and competence. You don't need to invest time and effort in developing the ability to understand how to implement an ISMS. You need to understand how to work within it. You don't need to actually learn how to create it in the first place. So it's a bit like creating any new process or service. What you want is the benefit out of it, and the expertise that you can draw in through the fast track enables you to get that. The core of ISO 27001 is risk management, is identifying risks to information security assets, processes, and putting in place appropriate mitigation strategies to reduce the likelihood and or the impact. That's integral to the whole ISO 27001 framework. It's built into CyberComply, it's built into the fast track process, the putting together of the risk assessment, the identifying what assets are in scope, all of that stuff is integral to how fast track is delivered. And that really means that because from the outset the ISMS is aligned with the strategic direction of the business, you should almost immediately begin to see the benefits of information security management coming through into the way in which the organization operates. And that includes, because you can demonstrate ongoing compliance, it means you can deal in a robust and process-oriented way with data subject access requests, with incidents that happen, all of the dynamic stuff that happens in our environment. It means you will have processes in place that you haven't had to work out that will enable you to deal with them in a way that both draws on best practice but also reflects the requirements of a range of different laws which impinge on these kinds of areas. Fast track is a transparent fixed price deal, so your budgeting for the project can be clear. You can go, it's going to take this long, it's going to cost that much, the price is not going to go up. It typically comes with a certification guarantee where IT governance says, hey, we've done this often enough that we can tell you that if you do what we say, you're going to meet the requirements of ISO 27001 certification body, you'll get certified. If it doesn't, we'll fix it at our own expense. So it's a valuable asset. We have clients who have a client who says, we need you to have it right now, and we can produce a letter to that client for you which says, you're on our fast track, you will get certified, and that can often deal with the bridge between now and where you need to be. So all of those kind of things are key elements in the fast track process. So just tying that concept into the 9 steps and the standard itself. ISO 27001, there are 10 clauses. There are only 7 of them that matter. So clauses 1, 2, and 3 are really just setting the scene. Clauses 4 through 10 are saying what you have to do. And it's not a guidance standard, it's a shall standard. You must do all of the things which the standard sets out. But it's technology agnostic, it's sector agnostic. So it starts with leadership. The heart of the management system is clause 5. Identifying and assessing risks and rolling out your risk treatment is clauses 6 and 8. And then around that are the issues of planning, how you support the management system, how you operate the management system, how you evaluate performance and how you drive improvements. All of those are key components within the envelope of, if you like, the context within which you're pursuing ISO 27001. The context is fundamentally legal, regulatory, and business requirements, and that includes business requirements, includes contractual and customer requirements. So it's a management system built fundamentally around achieving what businesses need to achieve. It's not a piece of bureaucracy. It's not created in a back room and looks really good in a vacuum. It's designed to work in ordinary businesses. We as an organization, for instance, have had ISO 27001 now for 9 or 10 years, probably longer. It's part of how the business operates. It's just kind of essential, fundamental to what happens. And so the starting point is a project mandate. And typically we look in a fast-track project to deal with the best part of the first 3 or 4 steps on the first day when we kick the project off. So pulling together all of the elements that will go into a formal project mandate. The stuff, quite a lot of that will then find its way into the policy document. We'll tie the policy into the business objectives. We'll tie the whole project timeline, the project operation together, set it up so it's structured as a proper project with real deliverables, clear about how that fits together with what you need to do in terms of deploying resource into it. And then we'll get on with establishing the requirements for each of the key processes and the tasks required to develop and implement them, producing the relevant documentation, and that's all part of the management framework. The management framework is dealing with documenting the context, the scope of the management system, making sure leadership is fully involved in the organization, that the business is aligned with, the ISMS is aligned with the organization and business objectives, that you know how you're going to document it. All of those kind of elements are dealt with in the creation of the management framework. The next step, step 5, the baseline security criteria, is what are the controls you have to have in place to meet existing legal, regulatory, contractual requirements. So if you're a payment card processor, for instance, you have to have PCI. So you don't do a risk assessment to determine which PCI controls put in. It's a contractual requirement. You have to comply with GDPR if you're in the UK, with EU GDPR if in the EU, and there are a number of things you have to do specifically to comply with that. So there's no risk assessment to do. There are just controls you have to put in place. We call those baseline security criteria. We identify those, we make sure we're clear about them, they're documented, they're listed on CyberComply. The next step is a risk management process, which goes, okay, we've identified the risks that, we've identified the controls that we have to have. We know which assets are in, we know what the scope of the management system is. What are the risks that we have that we've got to deal with that are not already dealt with by contractual, legal, or regulatory controls? And for that, we do a risk assessment. We identify the assets that fall within scope. We work out the likelihood of a given range of threats exploiting a given known set of vulnerabilities, the impacts and on the organization if it does successfully exploit it, and therefore we can determine on the basis of management's risk appetite what an appropriate mitigating control might be. And out of that we then produce what's called a risk treatment plan, which is what are we doing to reduce the likelihood or impact of those risks, and which controls are we going to use to do that. And that's a combination of the controls we've selected through the risk assessment plus the baseline security controls, and those go onto a statement of applicability. And because we're using CyberComply, the risk treatment plan and statement of applicability are produced automatically through the platform, just as part of how the platform makes life simple and straightforward. Then we get to the business of implementation, and that's where we've got to take the documentation, we've got to roll staff awareness training out, we've got to say, actually this policy means that people have to behave like this, it means that we might change settings on a firewall. There are a number of follow-ons that come from the decisions about how do we mitigate the risks we've identified. You then want to make sure that the mitigations that you've chosen are working, that staff training is effective, that the controls you put in place are producing the desired results, so your risk is in an area which you're satisfied with. And you get that through a combination of internal audit, through penetration testing, through a range of tests and activities which are designed to ensure that the controls are delivering what you want them to be delivering. And with all of that working, you then get stuck into your external certification audit, and we would expect, having done everything, gone through the first 8 steps, the certification audit component is going to be relatively straightforward for you. So resource requirements for certification for a fast-track project, you already need to have a basic level of cybersecurity. It takes a bit more time if you've got nothing, but you will have a basic level of cybersecurity. You'll need to provide key information. It's a critical element that we create a project plan that you're able to stick to it and that you produce the information that you need to produce so that we can get it into the documentation, into CyberComply, so that we can keep the project moving for you. And of course, you've got to be able to implement the controls that are appropriate for mitigating your risk or altering how the controls that you've got in place will work. And you'll need to have resources. And that gets scheduled in as part of the project planning. You'll need to make sure that whoever's going to manage your information security management system internally will get you through the certification audits. We can do that for you as part of a longer term engagement. But what the certification audits will be looking for is to see that you're in a position to manage the information security management system and certification on an ongoing basis hereafter. So the purpose of this webinar was to talk a bit about scope. I've passed over scope several times, but I'm going to come back to now and talk about how you define the scope of the management system. And there are two ways of thinking about scope. The first is, what's the scope of the ISO 27001 project itself? What are we trying to achieve in terms of implementing this management system? So it's a kind of it's the starting point. It's a fairly broad brush approach, and the key questions are: how many sites and geographies do you think you want to have in scope? What is the business currently that you think you want to have ISO 27001 get certified for? How many staff are going to be within scope? And you've got to think about full-time equivalent staff, you've got to think about contractors, you've got to think about the range of people who are doing work inside the business that you think of as needing to be in scope for ISO 27001. Key question: is there a single governing management team? If you've got multiple teams and you want to have multiple teams managing a single scope, you've got to work out who's going to be making the decision that's going to drive on core areas what everybody else does. So getting really clear what the governance structure looks like for your ISO 27001 project is a key bit of thinking about what's going to be in scope. And finally, what does the infrastructure look like? Are you trying to have a scope where the scope is sitting on top of an infrastructure which is shared with multiple other organizations? Because that might be quite difficult. You might have to find a way of creating barriers within to make that happen. So thinking about and talking through what the network infrastructure looks like is a key element in thinking about scope. So scoping the project, that kind of gives you an idea of, and gives us an idea of how long the project's likely to take, roughly how difficult it's going to be, what kind of issues we need to address. The second element in scoping is the formal scope of the management system itself. So ISO 27001 certificate will say that you have an information security management system. Here is the scope, and that within that scope you are complying with the requirements of ISO 27001. And the steps for scoping the information security management system is start with your information assets. And information assets are not just hardware and software, but people, premises, processes. Make a rough list. You're going to need it fairly early on to have a fairly detailed list, because that's going to go into inform the risk assessment. Think about a classification for assets based on importance and sensitivity, and think about who owns the assets. Typically, you're going to have them owned fairly high up the organization, but understanding information assets and how they interact with one another is first step in arriving at a formal scope statement for the management system. Think about the business processes that you want to have in scope. You need to have in scope the input and output stages of a business process. Very difficult for you to have a business process which starts outside the scope of what you want your management system to cover, or finishes outside the scope, because you've got to think about how do you deal with security once you pass beyond your border. So try and identify the processes that you want to have inside the management system. Think about the impact on those business processes of major risks, of major breaches. Does that have knock-on impacts to other processes, which therefore also need to be inside the scope of your management system? Think about the legal, regulatory, and contractual requirements that you need to be observing. And as I said, some of those might be obvious, some of them might not be obvious, but you want to, at this point, make sure that you've identified specifically what you need to be dealing with. And that enables you to go, okay, we think we can define clearly the boundaries, both physical and digital between what is in scope and what's not in scope. We can identify clearly what's not in scope and that we can work out how we have a relationship with what is not clearly in scope, and we can write a scope statement. We can draft a scope statement that defines those boundaries for clarity. So that's the core of the work that you've got to do around putting together a scope statement. And ISO 27001 wants to see this piece of work done properly. It's then worth talking to stakeholders, talking to external stakeholders, talking to the board, making sure that everybody goes, okay, we understand that we're outside the loop, we're inside the loop. Make sure that you've got real alignment between the way you think the scope works today, the direction of travel in the business, stakeholder expectations, and once you've got that all in place, you go to management and say, right, sign off on the scope statement. This is what we're building the management system around. This is what we're going to be defending. We might have, inside it there might be something like a cardholder data environment, might be within the ISMS scope, for instance. There's a number of ways you can come up, but you're going to go to management and say, sign off on the scope. This is the scope for the management system. And that formally documented scope you share through the policy statement, and you need to have a very short version of it which summarizes the scope, because that short version is what will go on your compliance certificate. So you finalize the scope. So this process is actually relatively straightforward. It just takes quite a lot of time, because getting really clear what's in scope is fundamental to making sure that your ISMS is going to do what you want it to do. I talked about getting senior management support. Mostly, my experience anyway, is senior management says, we need a certificate, can you get us one? To the guys who have to implement it, they're really not interested thereafter. But ISO 27001 says senior management support is essential. Senior management has to play a role not only in allocating budget, but also in providing leadership, in treating information security as though it's a key part of the business. And there are a number of things that you can do to make sure that senior management is properly bought in. They're going to set the tone for building a culture of security awareness and accountability, visible commitments to making sure resources are allocated, decisions are dealt with in a way that is appropriate for information security. All of that helps everybody else across the organization go, well, if senior management is doing it, then I better do it too. When senior management goes, you've got to do it, or we're not doing it, then actually it's very difficult to get people on board. And remember, the biggest risk is not the technology risk. The biggest risk is a human being making an error, clicking on a link they shouldn't click on, doing something they shouldn't do because their awareness of the need for security is lax. And that's one of the key areas that proper management buy-in, proper management support helps mitigate. And there are a number of strategies that you can do. So communicating clearly the business value of the ISMS, providing evidence of the effectiveness. Look, we've implemented this control. We've already seen a reduction in phishing incidents. A clear return on investment is going to cost us £25,000. It's going to cost us this on an ongoing basis. We'll be able to win these contracts. We'll be able to reduce the time it takes us to fill in RFPs by 50%. We can demonstrate quite clearly a cost-benefit analysis on top of the way in which ISO 27001 helps us manage reputation in the event of things going wrong. It's a strategic approach to information security, can lead to a reduction over a period of time in how much you invest in technology and the expensive parts of information security, and the education of people around scoping, around processes, around engagement. All of that can demonstrate to senior management that their involvement gets everybody doing a better job more efficiently and more effectively. And CyberComply really is critical to that whole process. When you think about information security, you're thinking about people, process, and technology. Mostly, traditionally, people go, well, cybersecurity is a technology issue, so let's just deploy more technology. As I said at the beginning, that doesn't work. You need people who know what they're doing. You need processes that determine what the appropriate deployments of technology are, what appropriate behaviors of people are, and it's a combination of what you do across all of those three domains that's important to how effective your information security management system is. And CyberComply is built around that logic. It's built around the idea that a range of standards and frameworks that you might need in future are all capable on the platform of being integrated in a way, being implemented in a way that integrates, that ties into skills development, that ties into future requirements around information security, and in fact goes significantly beyond what ISO 27001 requires, because mostly organizations find that having done ISO 27001, you have clients go, well, that's great, but I want you to do something else. And the reality of automating risk assessments, of generating documents using existing templates, having them automatically updated, streamlined incident tracking, all of those kind of areas that CyberComply brings out of the box are things that enable you to, from the outset, have a very effective and efficient information security management system. The real-time dashboard enables senior management to see where you are in terms of implementation, as well as seeing how a particular incident is being dealt with. So the combination of everything that comes out of the box enables you to do more than simply go, yay, we've got ISO 27001. It enables you to make information security management a core part of how effectively the organization operates, and enables you to drive defense in depth. So each of the controls in Annex A of ISO 27001 has an attribute: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, built around preserving confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And using a tool like CyberComply and ISO 27001 enables you to build really solid defense in depth, so that when an attack breaches the first line of defense, which it will do, you've got other lines of defense which will enable you to deal with that. And remembering that cyber and privacy breaches are just different sides of the same coin, what you need to be building in a cyber secure aware culture is a recognition that how you deal with all data has to be done in a way that's consistent and effective. Customers like CyberComply, when you get the slides, and they are distributed to everybody who has signed up for the webinar, there are a number of good customer comments on CyberComply. You can explore those. There are a number of good brands using the product. You can explore all of those. You can explore why clients increasingly say, don't risk it, let's CyberComply it. So, FastTrack solutions, obviously CyberComply. There's one price, all features. Do explore it when you get the webinar slides. Do go onto our website, have a look at all of the things that CyberComply can help you achieve. And of course, you can deploy CyberComply as part of a DIY package. As I said at the beginning, you can take it on as part of a FastTrack service, and as part of the FastTrack, you can buy in a managed service which will operate beyond simply the implementation of a management system, so that you can, again, without needing to learn how to manage the ISMS, you can just simply get the benefits from it, because we can supply a competent, qualified, experienced person who can do the management at a fraction of the cost that you can probably do it for yourself. So not only the implementation, but the management and maintenance of ISO 27001 through CyberComply, through the managed service, can become a very effective way to do it. But of course, doing it yourself is also an option. There's an internationally certificated lead implementer training course. There's a lead audit training course. If you already have a lead audit or lead implementer training course, but to the 2013 standard, you can upgrade them to the 2022 standard, which you would need to do because certification auditors expect you to have a certificate that matches the management standard that you are complying with. You can get copies of the standard from our website, and in fact, you can get anything that you need from us. As I said at the beginning, we have the broadest set of ISO 27001 products and services anybody might need. And this brings us to the opportunity for questions. If you remember, I said the question panel on your GoToWebinar is designed so that you can put questions in there. And I'm going to simply go through and pick out the questions. I'll share the question with you. If you click on the panel, you can type a question into it. I'll share the question with you, and then I'll answer the question to the best of my ability. I'll just give, there's some questions in there, but I'll just give you all a minute or two for those of you who want to add questions to do that. So let me pick up questions as you've got them. First question which came in was, how could we demonstrate the efficiency and return on investment in ISO 27 by the owners of the business? What numeric method is most useful for educating them to do this? And I think the answer to that question is it depends on what the primary objective for the business is, and you're going to focus on how ISO 27001 helps you achieve that objective. So if the primary objective is about winning new business, then you're going to look at the number of new contracts that you can win, because you can focus on ISO 27001. So you look at the change in your closed won ratio in your opportunity management activity. It might be that you look at it can shorten your sales cycle because you spend less time doing RFPs, because you can simply produce the certificate. You don't have to fill in all of that detail. So you focus on what are the different ways in which we can use ISO 27001 to demonstrate that we're doing the key thing we want to do better, and then you quantify it, and that gives you the kind of figures that enable you to give you a demonstrated return on investment. When we're not already ISO 27001 certified but need to be DORA compliant, is ISO 27001 a first step, or should another approach be adopted? And the answer to that is ISO 27001 is absolutely a logical first step. There is no other information security standard that you can start with. When you go through the detailed requirements of DORA, you keep on hearing echoes of ISO 27001. So to a very real extent, if you implement ISO 27001 and then add a bit to it, you will find that you are DORA compliant. And if you go on our on the IT governance DORA practitioner training course, you'll find that's pretty much the methodology that's adopted. The key elements of ISO 27001 which sit in the training that IT governance delivers and that you can draw on in order to build all of the core and most of the detail of what DORA requires. DORA has got some specific requirements which sit on top of that, but the core of DORA is preserving the confidentiality, integrity, availability, and authenticity of information and processes that operate in the regulated environment, and all of those in service providers, in third-party ICT service providers to financial sector companies. So yes, ISO 27001 is absolutely the most sensible place to start if you have to do DORA. It's also likely to get you to the point when you can demonstrate DORA compliance much more quickly than anything else. With respect to, sorry, hang on a minute, I missed a few questions. Can we arrange a demo of CyberComply, please? Yes, that's not a problem. If you simply respond directly to us, email in, I think there's a survey that follows after this, and you ask for a survey, they can set that up and make sure that you get to have a demo for that. That's not a problem. How long will it take for me to get the ISO 27001 lead implementer certificate? So if you've not done the course before, it's a 3-day training course. If you're not aware of ISO 27001 at all, there's a foundation course that comes before it. The foundation is not mandatory. It's a 3-day lead implementer training course. You do the exam there and then at the end of the 3rd day. If you pass the exam, you'll get the certificate. The certificate will follow relatively quickly thereafter. Passing the exam, there's a relatively high pass rate. I think that the standard you've got to pass is 75%, but we have a very high number of people pass that. It's very focused, very effective training course. If you're an existing ISO 27001 2013 certificated person, the transition course is only 1 day. The exam is done at the end of that day, and that automatically updates your certificates to compliance to 2022 standard. With respect to information security management system framework integration, does that include VMDR platforms like Qualys, XDR? So from a practical point of view, what framework integration means is framework of other standards and frameworks such as ISO 9001, DORA, PCI. It's enabling all of the documentation, if you like, the governance, risk management, and compliance documentation to be integrated into a single governance framework that enables you to effectively manage how you deal with Qualys. So it enables you to tie the way in which you're using Qualys, the way in which you're dealing with XDR, etc., tie it into multiple requirements, but it's not a platform. CyberComply isn't a platform that enables you to manage Qualys directly at this point. It enables you to tie it into your governance framework. Do you have any recommendations for data mapping tools? There is a data flow mapping tool in CyberComply, so that enables you to not only map data flows, it helps you identify what's flowing internationally, it helps you produce the Article 30 report on processing that GDPR requires. That's built into the data flow mapping tool inside CyberComply. So CyberComply is a whole lot more than just an ISO 27001 tool. It enables you to do all of the core basic things that the key compliance activity requires you to do. Does ISO cover bring your own device? And if so, what are the headline requirements? So yes, ISO covers bring your own device. It recovers it in the sense that there are controls listed in Annex A, which maps to detailed guidance in ISO 27002, which are about bring your own device. And the starting point is identify what your risks are. And having identified what your risks are, put in place appropriate mitigation. So ISO 27001 does not mandate what you have to do to manage bring your own device. It does mean, because there are clearly risks, it does mean you need to identify what the risks are and you need to work your way through to how you deal with them. But the range of how you deal with them is really driven by your own risk assessment and your own risk appetite. So your options range all the way from a device management platform through to simply blocking devices, limiting them to what they can do, to saying they can only access particular assets. So the range of options is up to you. They're all available, if you like, within what ISO 27002 provides guidance on. What's the cost? The cost of a fast track, it depends on the project scope. If you talk to our professional advice team, they can tell you, but on average for an organization of around about 200 employees, it's around about £25,000. It doesn't vary massively from that. It might go up or down a little bit depending on the number of employees and number of sites. But if you talk directly to one of the IT governance professional services experts, they'll be able to scope your project and give you a precise and firm price. Does ISO 27001 cover NIST 2 directive? If not, then how different are they? So ISO 27001 is an information security best practice standard. NIST 2 is as you correctly identified, directive from the EU setting out how organizations in critical national infrastructure have to go about protecting their core assets and processes. ISO 27001 is a significant component of what you need to do to meet the requirements of NIST 2. So in the same way as ISO 27001 sets you up to comply with DORA, ISO 27001 sets you up to comply with NIST 2. You may have to go a bit further than ISO 27001 because NIST 2 has got some very specific requirements around business continuity, and you might be wanting to look at ISO 22301. And your national cyber authority may have specific requirements over how you do the risk assessment that sits in there, and you may need therefore to adapt the tools that are inside CyberComply. But typically, ISO 27001 is a huge component of a directive like NIST 2. So it really does make it easy for you to progress towards NIST 2 compliance. Do we have a payment plan? There can be a payment plan. It depends on what you need. Of course, if there's a payment plan, things always cost more. But again, if you talk to the professional service team in IT governance, they'll be able to talk to you about what the options are and how you can go about accessing those. Our board has requested that we achieve ISO 27001 certification. We recently acquired Cyber Essentials Plus, and we did the CIS CSAT assessment recently and scored over 80%, which puts us in a pretty healthy position. My question is, how difficult would it be for us to acquire ISO certification, nothing that we still need to develop an ISMS as part of the process? So, Cyber Essentials Plus is, well done. That's a good certification to have. Cyber Essentials Plus, though, really only deals with 5 basic controls. ISO 27001 lists 97 controls in Annex A, and you've got to determine whether you apply all of those or not. So Cyber Essentials I think of as being a critical subset of ISO 27001 because it deals with a specific set of controls. You will have documented a number of the other processes that are part of ISO 27001, but you've only got evidence of compliance with 5 controls. So I would say on the basis of if you've effectively documented your processes as Cyber Essentials requires, you will have made a significant step towards being ready to make rapid progress with an ISO 27001 project. Your CSAT assessment, again, it's a good score, but it kind of depends on the reality of how your CSAT assessment relates to what it is that you're doing inside the organization. But I would imagine that you're probably at a place where, again, I don't know what size your organization is, but I would imagine you're probably at a place where you could get to readiness for certification in maybe something like 6 to 8 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks. We need to know more if you talk to one of the IT governance professional advisors. They'd be able to talk to you about what your scope might look like, what you might need to do in order to get there. But what I can guarantee you is that whatever it is you need to do, the fast track process will get you there very, very quickly indeed. So what's the cost for ISO 27001 lead implementer certificate for individuals, and do you have a payment plan? So the ISO 27001 lead implementer certificate, you need to look on the website. It's something in the order of a couple of £1,000s. You can book in advance, but I know that with all training courses, attendance, the fees have to be paid before you can attend the training course. So it's kind of worthwhile looking at that. But remember, through PayPal, and I know IT governance takes payment through PayPal. PayPal will automatically offer a payment plan where you can pay for something over 3 months in any case without it being an issue from our point of view. So those kind of options already exist. And that kind of looks like the end of questions, which is neat because we're just coming to the 4 o'clock point, which is where we expected to end this webinar. I'm putting on screen the various websites. So what I've talked to you about is available through EU, US, and UK websites. Talk to the IT governance sales professional teams in any one of those countries, depending on where you are and what you need, and they can advise you really on how if you want to do it yourself, you can do that, but can also advise you on how you can deploy the fast track option to get yourself to certification readiness in double quick time. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that's been a useful hour of your time. The slides will be available probably tomorrow. I think they're already available right now to everybody who's on the webinar. They're in the panel so that you can download them. If you go to the handout section, you can access them right there. And I hope that if we can serve you, you'll give us a call. We'll do what we can for you, and I hope that you're able to stay secure, stay out of the hands of cyber attackers and the whole host of e-criminals that are out there. And remember that there's a whole series of webinars around ISO 27001 and related subjects. Do feel free to join us at any point, and we'll do whatever we can to help you progress in this insecure world that we inhabit. Thank you all for your time today. Goodbye.